In this example, we're going to show you how to build a function app, Azure Function app, and also connect to FlowWright and start creating some process instances and have them processed. So I'm going to our Azure portal, and I also have our FlowWright running here. So let me first create the Azure Function app. So I'm going to go ahead and say create function app. And this is going to give me a dialog. And I'm going to pick this first one uh, as the hosting plan. And in this case, I'm going to create a new resource group because I want to be able to delete this easily. So let me create a new resource group and let's call it FW function apps yes resource, and I'm going to give the name. Here I'm going to give a function app name. So I'm going to say FW func apps, and I'm going to give a runtime stack here. And in this case, I'm going to use .NET, and we'll use .NET Core 8 LTS. And the region is East. I'm going to actually use East 2. And it's a Windows operating system. And I can say next storage. I can leave these things alone. I can just say review and create. And everything should pass validation. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and create this and let Azure create it. This will take a minute or two to create, and as it's creating, you can see the status of the deployment. And so it was pretty quick. You can see that it's performing all these particular actions. And once this is done, this resource is going to be available. Typically, this is depending on the region, this is pretty quick. Like I said, it's a minute or two and it should be done. So while this is doing this, we're going to go start building uh, the Azure Function app in Visual Studio. So I'm in Visual Studio now, and we want to do a new project. So I'm going to say create new project. And if you look at this particular ones, I'm going to go ahead and say I want to build one for Azure. And let me see all projects. And one of the first ones that comes up is the Azure function. And I'm going to click that next on that. And I'm going to give a name. Let's call it, our project name is called, let's say, FW functions. And I'm going to store that in my projects folder. Actually, let me call it FW demo functions. And we'll put the same solution name and all that. Click next. And we're going to use .NET 8. And also, in this case, we're going to use the HTTP trigger. So we're building this to be more of like a REST API call. And we can also tell to use Azure Write for runtime storage account. And we can also, in this case, we're not going to do continue support. And authorization level is function level. And we're going to say, go ahead and create this. At this point, it created the project for me. And as you can see, it kind of gave a boilerplate function. You can name this class pretty much anything you want and the function. So let's keep it as function one. And run is where you would put all your logic or your code to perform something in this case. So in this particular function, what we're going to do is we are going to communicate with FlowWright we're going to get a process definition. We're going to kick off a bunch of instances or an instance every time this function is called. So in order to do that, first we need to use the FlowWright API, and you can easily do that by adding the Nuget package. So if you go to dependencies, and if you actually right click on the project, you can say manage Nuget packages. And if you search for FlowWright and click on browse, you will see that FlowWright API 10 comes up. Right now, the latest version is 10.5. So I'm going to go ahead and say install and accept a couple of these things, and that should automatically install. You'll see that it already got installed. And I can also just go and say compile and make sure it builds everything. All right, so at this point, it compiled, no problem. So let's go ahead and implement some logic. And in this case, since we're using the FlowWright API, we want to say using FlowWright API. And also we will be using FlowWright API process. And let's put a little try catch block here. And in this API, I'm going to hard code the connection string. You can always read that from a app settings JSON configuration or wherever you want. But in this case, I'm going to say my connection string is going to be as a string. Let's say private string um, CR. And I'm going to copy this connection string. So I'm going to connect to one of our databases and perform this. So now that we have a connection string, the next thing I'm going to do is implement my logic here inside the try catch. So the first thing we need is we need um, uh, design object. So I'm going to say FW process design. For design equals new. And in this case, I just need to give the connection string. And I just need to give the user I want to connect as. And we have a design object. So the next thing we want to do is we want to get the process definition, get a handle to the process definition. So I'm going to say W process definition. For that equals for design get definition. And by default, I need to provide the definition ID. And we can get that from FlowWright UI. So let me switch over to FlowWright. And as you can see, the Azure deployment is completed now. So I'm going to go ahead and go in here. And I'm going to go ahead and log into FlowWright. And once I have logged in, we're going to go to process definitions. And I'm going to pick, let's say, for example, this guy right here, test loop. And if you render it, you will see that it's just a simple loop that goes through multiple times. And if you look at the URL here, you can also grab the definition ID. So let's do that. And let's go back to our code. And I'm going to tell to get this particular definition. And in the next line, I'm going to create an instance based on this definition. So I'm going to say W process instance equals ODEP for your instance. And here I'm going to give it a blank name, and it will automatically generate a name for the instance if I do that. And then all I have to say is to execute, for instance, dot execute, and um, and that's it. Within 4 lines of code, you can literally create a instance and execute a process flow. Okay, execution error, and it's mostly going to show the exception message here. And we'll also log information saying, otherwise, we'll say processing instance, and we can also show the instance ID, instance, instance ID. All right, so if everything runs good, we will see this message. Otherwise, we will see the log, and we can also see this real time. And we're going to send back OK object result and say, we'll just say processing Nuget. All right, so now we can easily build this and test it locally. So let's go ahead and do that. And locally, you can actually debug this code also and do all that good stuff. So all I had to do is press run here, and this will run executable. And this will also give you information showing you that, hey, if you want to test this method, go ahead and run this. And so if you go ahead and click on this or the definition, and as you can see, we have a definition object now. Now, based on that definition object, we're going to tell it to create an instance. And let's check the instance. So the instance got created, and we're telling it to execute. And that's it. You know, and if you look at now, the code ran perfectly. And if you go to our process definitions, you can see that test loop has 0 instances. But if I just refresh, you'll see I have a 1 instance now. You can also go to process instances and look at that new instance that got created and that got processed by the engine. So in this case, let me refresh this and update this here. And so let's go ahead and run this again, um, and see what it produces. So if I look at my instance list, I should have a new instance here, test loop, and it just got created. And you can also see it got executed. So it all ran, everything good. So now what we can do is, now that we know the function is working locally, we can actually go ahead and publish this. So I'm going to go back to Visual Studio, stop my instance here running, and we are ready to publish this now. And before we publish, I'm going to suggest this. I've seen this issue in Azure. When you go to publish, it might give you an error when you try to publish because of basic authentication is not turned on. So what you want to do is you want to go into Azure and you want to go into your resource. And on this particular one, if you go into the configuration, you're going to see general settings here, and you'll see like .NET 8 and all that stuff. And you want to turn on basic authentication for publishing. By default, Visual Studio will use basic authentication. So you want to make sure that this is turned on. And I'm going to go ahead and say save. And this will also update the settings and it will restart and all that stuff. So we're going to wait until that is done. So now we are ready to go and publish. So what we can do is now go back to Visual Studio and we are going to go and say publish. And when you go to publish, it's going to give you some options. Here you can say, I want to pick Azure and you want to do Azure Function and Windows. And if you are already connected to your subscription, Azure subscription, it will automatically bring and show you the functional apps that are available. So I'm going to go ahead and say this particular one and say finish. And this is going to create a published profile automatically. And once we close this, you can see now we're going to release Win64 release version, and we are also going to do it automatically configure the rest. Now we can go ahead and say publish. And once you hit publish, you will see that it did all this work, is connecting to the publishing target. And now it's going to start, you know, sending, building, and then preparing the application and uploading to Azure and getting the app ready. So in your output window, you should see a bunch of stuff that's going on. And you can see it literally zips up your application, sends it to Azure, and unzips and sets it up. So let's give it a little bit of time for this to happen. So you can see waiting, it's already the publish, waiting for the function app to be ready. Okay, so you can see everything looks good. Function app is ready now. And if you go back to Azure, and if you go to your overview, you should see under apps here. Um, let's go ahead and refresh. Yes. You should see your function one being published here. And if you go into that app, you can actually do create test. You can, look at the integration. You can also look at function keys that you might want to use to call this. You can also look at invocations, and you can also look at the logs. And this is a real-time log of what's going on with this function. So right now it's connected and it's waiting for any action. Right now I haven't called this function yet. And so if you want to call this, what we can do is we can actually go to test. You can say get function URL. So I'm going to go ahead and you'll see a little window that will come. And there are different keys that you can use to call this function. There's a master key, there's a default key, default host key. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this default function key. And now that we have copied, I'm going to also turn on the logging. Let's go ahead and look at the log. And let's wait till the log connected. So now what we can do is we can actually call this function. Just go to tab on your web browser and you can call it. So let me go and say yes. And now it should hit the app and it says processing completed. So if you look at, go back to Azure, you can also see the login here. You can see processing instance and our instance ID. And you can see, it's returned back. And so our function is now performing and running. And if you go and look at our instances, we should see a new instance. So right now, our latest instance that got created was this at 4 p.m. And let's go ahead and call this again. And I'm going to press enter. And again, you will see that it ran again here. And our new instance should be F04. And if you look at our list here, here's F04 that got created, and you can see it has a status of completed because the FlowWright engine already processed it. And we can also render this particular instance, and we can see this. So you can see everything ran good. So pretty easily with 3 or 4 lines of code, you can have a visual function that executes and performs things with the FlowWright, using the FlowWright API. So you can launch processes, you can do various things using visual functions. Hope you learned how to create a visual function, and thanks for watching.